Good afternoon, everybody. My name's James Powell. I'm Chief Technology Officer for Thomson Reuters. Welcome to another TechVision. This is a meeting where we focus on the real-world applications of technology and trends around technology and how they affect us and our customers. Our speakers are external thought leaders who hopefully help us reframe those ideas and think about the growth opportunities. Today's seminar, I think, is going to be really fascinating. It's about hearing about how people are thinking about data, both data inside the company, data externally, and how customers think about data. That's the term big data has been around for quite a while now, and I can remember numerous consultants coming to pitch us that Thomson Reuters was a big data company and there were opportunities. But this is framework these guys from Imperial are going to talk about really gives us a good framework, I think, to think about how we can leverage data in different ways, how companies are thinking about data in different ways. And I think that's very important for Thomson Reuters because we're focused on innovation and growth, and data is one of our big assets. We're building data science teams. We're starting to think about how we can use big data technologies, so very appropriate. Today, we are going to meet a couple of guests from Imperial College. We've been working closely with Imperial for a couple of years now around life science and big data projects. Our guests today are David Gann and Yike Guo, who are at the forefront of data-driven research at Imperial College, the new Data Science Institute, which was established earlier this year. I think, as I said, their presentation is extremely timely, and as we look to experiment in combining data from inside and outside our organization. David Gann is Imperial College's Vice President, leading development and innovation, who is responsible for shaping the vision, strategy, and innovation agenda for Imperial College and the development of its new 25-acre West London campus, Imperial West. Previously, David was the Deputy Principal for Research and Business Engagement at Imperial College Business School. And David has awards, we won't say what they are, in economics, science, and engineering contributions. I don't know what that means. You can tell us, right? Yike Guo is the founding director of the Multidiscipline Data Science Institute at Imperial College. He's carried out research and development in the field of data-intensive analytic computing at Imperial since 1995, when he was the technical director of Imperial's Parallel Computing Center. Professor Guo focuses on applying data mining technology to scientific data analysis in the fields of life science, healthcare, environmental science, and the economy. He's published nearly 200 research papers. And Yike has had responsibility for a number of major UK and European projects on data science and engineering research. We'll hear from both our guests and then have a short Q&A after that. And then we'll open it to a live audience as well. So please welcome me in join me in welcoming David Gann and Yike Guo. Thanks.
Thank you, James, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to run through a few of the ideas that we've been working on as to how data might be used in businesses like yours. And I'll start off with just a few words about innovation, because most of my academic work has been looking at how innovation processes occur and how you get more value from innovation. And the big item, I think, for anyone in that area is how do we harness data to innovate? And there are a number of attributes. Yike will talk a little bit more about how technologies are combining to provide data. Internet of Things, cloud, mobile internet, and data everywhere is the mantra today. And I think everyone, your business, our business as a research and education organization, are being challenged as to how we use data. Distributed, it is pretty well everywhere these days. A lot of it is now usable in digital form, and it's pretty well global because we can harness data about what's happening pretty well everywhere. Anytime, anywhere, anything is the mantra. And with that in mind, I'd been working with colleagues in IBM, actually, for 5 or 6 years, looking at questions of how data might be harnessed in different business models and business processes. And we were looking at particular types of business models in IBM's customers. And after a period of time, we thought we'd seen some patterns. So we stopped and did some work ourselves on those patterns, and eventually came through with 5 distinctive ways in which we saw data challenging mainstream businesses in different sectors. So the 5 I'll share with you are examples that I think you might find in many places. They're not at the bleeding edge, if you will, of some of the new social media businesses, although they may apply to that. IBM at the time was particularly interested in what might disrupt their clients' own businesses. And a lot of those businesses are mainstream companies in everyday marketplaces. So we took those 5 patterns and we published in Harvard Business Review earlier this year a paper. And I'm just going to run through each of those patterns coming from that paper. And then we can have a discussion about it. Yike will pick each one of those up and give you further examples and show how the technologies are combining to make these things happen. So pattern 1 is augmenting products to generate new data. And that is about gathering and analyzing data that might be latent or unavailable unless you do something to get your hands on it in existing products and activities. And the example that I'll use is that of Rolls-Royce and the harnessing of data about the performance of the jet engine. And that was a project that started about 14, 15 years ago. A lot of academics were involved in that project. And it involved putting sensors into the engine, and I think about 167 sensors picking up data, and measuring things like oil viscosity, temperature, pressure, wear and tear, vibration particularly, in different parts of the engine, and signaling that back. And that produces a huge amount of data on how the engine's working. What do you do with that? Well, you're able to model performance and understand in a much more fine-grained way how to provide a maintenance protocol for jet engines. And it was that allowed Rolls-Royce to change its business model from selling jet engines to leasing engines, and as they say, powered by the hour. So the data-driven approach has allowed them to shift into a market which was much more profitable than the traditional selling of a jet engine, and link into their customer base over a long term. And there are many other examples of that. There's another one on this slide, the SKF. This is the ball bearing, and SKF were under some competitive pressure with lookalike ball bearings. They need to be able to prove that their ball bearings were superior and understand their performance, so they put tiny little sensors in the bearings. And they therefore can monitor how those bearings are used and also verify that they are theirs rather than a cheap lookalike that might break in some piece of industrial machinery. So that's taking existing products, collecting data from them, and creating value added in terms of the services that you'd sell back. The second pattern I think everyone's going to be familiar with. This is when the product evaporates in front of our eyes, and it's something that's been highly disruptive in particularly the entertainment, the music industries, and some of the media industries. And we've just seen the CD disappear from the high street and the high street shops selling CDs disappear as downloadable music, video, and other information has become more and more available, streaming data onto your device or at home, wherever you are. And that has opened up whole new business models and relationships between you and I and whichever service provider. And it's really turned on its head in some ways, the ways in which we engage with the performing arts, news media, and organizations like yours. And I assume and know in some parts that you're up to your neck in trying to make that happen and have almost real-time access to your users through these digital channels. And we're seeing more of that in other markets as well, healthcare, and I think, Yike, you'll say a little bit more about some of those examples. So if we look at the third pattern, this is about combining data within and across industries. And one of the things we've seen is a breakdown of what were traditional silos between originally separate industries because of the ability to coordinate information between them and find better ways of providing services. And I just think about electric vehicles in London. We have the transport sector and the electricity supply sector, but these two have to come together. And we're looking now at creating new data sets. I chair a board for Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London, called the Smart London Board. And we've got a number of projects which are working on combining data. You may have seen the Open Data Institute and it's London Data Store. London's probably on the front foot of any city in the world in terms of making public access to data about how different parts of our city work. In the last 2.5 years, transport data has been made available such that 450 apps have been built on the back of it. If you look at City Mapper, how many of you use City Mapper here? Half of you, right? So City Mapper has been downloaded probably onto half of the mobile devices of people walking around London in the last 6 months. It's one of the fastest moving apps into the market of anywhere. It's developed in London, and that platform has some really smart algorithms, and it's sucking in data that was traditionally in different places and making it really useful bespokely to you and helping us get around almost in real time. So if you're using it and your journey adjusts, you'll see that happen there. And there's a lot of value added in that data. So there's an example of the combination of data. And if we look at the fourth one, we see that in some instances, you can trade that data. And there's good value in taking data sets and trading them across into another channel. One of the examples here is the buying and selling of data between TomTom and Vodafone for alerting us about traffic congestion or routing. And getting a much more fine-grained view of what's happening to traffic because you can stream off the top of the GPS on the Vodafone anonymously and see how far people are moving, if they're stuck or not in traffic, and match that up with the static detectors in the streets or on the motorways. So, but to do that, one sees the value in the data and then has a deal between two different industries. And we're starting to see more and more of that happening these days, particularly in trading mobile data and positional data. And we think there's a lot more that's going to happen there and a lot more value to be had and new business models that are going to flow from that. The final example is codifying distinctive capabilities or service capabilities from activities that you may already have to be doing to run your own business. This largely applies to large organizations that have a big customer base, a lot of information and data about their customers, or a large workforce and a lot of information about that. When I was working with IBM, we still work with them a lot, but their employee base had risen to 420,000. How do you keep track on the expenses and what sort of machinery do you have internally to manage an organization like that? Well, you develop it yourself, particularly if you're an IT company. And one of the platforms, the Global Expense Reporting platform that IBM developed, first of all, internally, they turned to good use and they offer it now and it's sold on in the market to their customers. Citigroup, another business that we work with at Imperial College very closely, looking at digital money, were able to create the CityB mobile platform from the global tracking of payments that they were doing internally first of all. And they realized that actually if they had to do it and could do it for themselves, they could turn this into a service capability and harness that capability to sell and service their customers with. And that's been another valuable business model that's emerged from the realization of what you can do with data. So there we are. There are 5 data-driven innovation platforms, if you will. And what we've done since then is wrap that up into this little package and starting to identify where companies may have one or more of these attributes that can then be enlivened or added to so that they can create value in the market. You know, what sort of data relates to your products if you're a product manufacturer? Are you a ball bearing manufacturer? Can you put little sensors in the bearings? How do you digitize your assets? Have you got things that can evaporate completely into virtual business and start to stream out into bigger channels? Can you combine data from within different parts of your business that will add value, or with other organizations, taking weather data with health data, for example, as we're doing in London, to provide services to those perhaps with respiratory disease when there are particular pollutants in the atmosphere. And then trading data, can you sell your data on to someone else who might find it valuable rather than sitting it there latent, and how do you do that? What are the protocols around that? What sort of business model can you create that will allow value to flow in two directions? And finally, what are you doing anyway that might be valuable to someone else? And can you build the tools and the structures and data architecture in-house in order to productize that and then sell on to your customers? And I think at that point, I'll hand across to Yike to give us some examples of how the technologies work in these different contexts.
Thanks, David. Yeah. So what I do is I really focus on the Data Science Institute, really couple of research, which is really corresponding to a couple of patterns, which David just mentioned about the 5 patterns. The first pattern was really talking about augment the product with data. So this one example, which we can give in the research, is our research on this called neural broadcasting. So the idea is you augment the TV with the data capture facilities like eye trackers and also the brainwave detectors, EEG machines, actually to capture actually your viewing interests. So actually this is completely built up, and then we did a demonstration on the 5th of this month, just a couple of days ago, in the GE, Digital Economy 2014, is fully working now. So what happened is you got the television here, you have eye track. Now at this time you wear it, but actually in the products we build in the TV. And then you can watch the TV, and eye track is capture your eye movement, and EEG detect your brain emotion status. So if you find a subject and you're interested, it will be sent to profile you. So you will understand you actually watching what kind of the pictures in the screen, and then feedback. And the feedback you can actually reschedule, for example, the programs, but in the demonstration we show is on the other side of the web search. So if you look at this guys and your particular interests, and then you will find out on the web the details of what you're interested in. It's quite interesting. It's in early research, but it's a typical idea of you augmented one product, in this case TV, actually to have various new function. This will really for think about the application. This can be used for really controlled advertisement, personalized advertisement, and also personalized probably even the program. So second pattern, which David mentioned about, is digitization, and sometimes people also call datafication. Basically, you measure and quantify it, all the physical contents. And the one good example you can think about is quantify ourselves, right? That's the quantify the life. So this is really the body sensor revolution. So now we already see in the last 3-4 years, and it's a rapid growth of the digital body sensors. It started from the jawband, now the Apple Watch. But very soon, right, you will have a really well-developed devices measure almost everything, measure your schemes, heartbeat rate, and brain waves, so on. All this information will provide precise measurement to your physiology status and the signals. And such a systems now is really can give you a tremendous values about monitor your well-being and health status, have a valuable application in the medical and healthcare. So one thing we're actually doing now is we're really developing the body sensor informatics systems for integrate all this information for home care, right? So one of the practical project we are doing with our medical school is at home care systems for a disease, mental disease. In this particular case, is a multiple sclerosis. So those patients this disease is a neurodegenerative disease. A patient cannot walk properly, and so therefore it's pretty painful to send the patient to the hospital to do the continuous check. In this case, we really put the body sensor in the bodies and use the mobile communication, send the signal to the cloud, and doing analysis against really the clinical profiles of each patient and score your disease progress status. And in this case, you can really offer the online advice to the patient in this disease. But this could be really applicable to many different diseases, either is on the mental diseases or physical diseases. And that's the datafication. And the other pattern which David mentioned about is really the combining data within across sectors. And sometimes I use the word data chemistry. So I think this is exactly, I view the Thomson Reuters as a typical data chemistry company. You put all this different data together, make different products, actually probably generate even more data. But one of the very, very good example is on the data chemistry business is really we're talking about is city. So, and David and myself actually run this project called the Digital City Exchange. The concept here now is to have the holistic views about the city data by integrating the different sectors of city data together to generate dynamic pictures of the city. Is EPRC funded research. But now as we progress really well, we build integrated systems to integrate all the different city data from energies, from the transportations, pollution. But also, we also really combine this data based on some models. For example, in this case, we took the weather data, pollution data, traffic flow to generate a city pollution map, right? And you actually this kind of the map is dynamically reflect the city pollution status. I think it may not be that serious to London, but think about Beijing. This kind of the map is really of the need. So that kind of the research is really a typical application of so-called data chemistry. So this is the system we built. We call it Wiki Sensing. It's open running. It's open source software running by the Data Science Institute. We're really hosting the weather data, social network data, traffic data, pollution data, health data. And we're developing a universal query language based on query data following the GPS position. And you can get all the data come together. It's quite similar with David talking about the city maps. But this is really focused on research. And underneath, you have the city model here. And you, against the data was a model to data assimilation to actually create a dynamic city map. So this is the pattern. Another pattern is what we called trading, so data trading. This is something I think is extremely interesting from the Data Science Institute point of view. So data science is not really just a branch of the statistics, although we use a lot of statistics. It's just not just a branch of the computer science. It's really, you can think about data as a natural resource and how to use it to make a new economy. So if you're doing so, you cannot really avoid talking about data as a commodity, data as a changeable goods. So in this case, it's a very interesting development we are doing in the Data Science Institute to do a trading model for the data. So what this means, we're trading data all the time, but we do this implicitly. So you sign the declarations whenever you want a service from the internet, Facebook or Google, whatever. And you read the box, ask you to tick the box. You have to tick it anyway because otherwise you'll be denied the service. So you basically trade the data implicitly or out. But that is not a right way. It's not a progressive way. So the real way is you should explicitly tell the service provider what kind of data you give in order to return what kind of service. But thinking about this is really a system we built for our medical application. In the medical situation, we built a system called the Wiki Health, monitor everybody's body sensor data. But if you want to give away this data to the service provider, you really have to really understand what the consequence could be, what benefit you can get. So therefore, you need to build a trading model on the service, on the internet, to allow you to actually trade the data in an explicit way. So we're actually developing the entire systems which change the Android operating system, in fact. So the data will not be directly sent. It actually be sent in a central data bank. Within this data bank, users have this kind of data policy. You can define together with the service provider, build these exchange models. Based on these exchange models, you give the data out, you receive the data, you receive the service back. So that kind of trading systems is actually now seriously researched. It's spin out many questions here. So you have a service level quality agreement. On the other hand, you have the data granularity. How to correspond in the data granularity with the service you want, one-to-one correspondent. How to exchange a different the data based on some kind of price model. So it's all quite new. So this area is really worth a lot of research. So that is really another innovation which we're talking about data trading. And last but not least is to quantify our existing service. It's pretty hard. We are not IBM, so a university cannot really think about. But actually, we're doing a lot. The best example I can think about is actually data science itself. And one way you think about it is a lot of work we're doing in each department can actually be served to the external services. I'll give you one very simple example. One example is actually I did yesterday a very good PhD viva, which is use our epidemiology model, right? Epidemiology research, the software, to predict at internet rumor. So this is a very wonderful example that this data science institute can provide. So basically, we allow the people to communicate from the different disciplines to actually translate one technology into other. Think about the rumor on the internet, the rumor spread. How can actually we monitor the rumor spread behaviors? How can we design the strategy to control the rumor, but also to actually prevent its further spreading and find out the way to actually control it? It's very similar with you control a virus in the epidemiology situation. So this is exactly, you can see. And also, for example, many of our data we use for monitor education quality. This kind of data now can be offered as external service for the further education advice, also on. So this is really, you can think about Data Science Institute is kind of our way of innovate by leverage actually the different disciplines, technology, and combine them together to really answer the big challenge.
Great, thank you very much. So we're going to do a few questions that were prepared earlier, and then we'll open it up to the audience. I think one of the interesting things I'm interested in is these new business opportunities that are coming out of different ways of thinking about data are often cannibalistic, right? Cannibalize existing models, existing products within a business. Have you seen good examples of how to manage that and how people are thinking about these data issues?
It's a good question, isn't it? And if you're in a big business, sometimes people in a division or somewhere on the edge may be trying something out.
Right.
I think the answer here is to try and do a pilot or a demonstration if you can.
Yeah.
And to understand what traction you've got in a new market or in an existing market. I mean, a lot of business model innovation, which is the part I was really focusing on, you can do as much as you like back in the office trying to model what a business model would look like, but it doesn't become real until you do some demonstration with real customers. The real proof of a business model working is when you've got a revenue flow and you're making some money back. And
sure.
I think the cannibalization, well, it will happen. In one sense, that may be to do with gaining better efficiency in older processes, which you'll need to take some data out, you'll need to do some reorganization. It may actually expose that some of the ways you were thinking of currently working are no longer efficient and effective, and you have to realign. And so I think there are disruptions here because what may be good, solid business processes and models today may be exposed by some of these new data-rich innovations. Right. Yeah. And force you then to go back in and change the other one. So I see this as quite dynamic, actually, and I think organisations are moving different bits of themselves forward as they're learning about this in the market.
Well, organisations are starting to think much more carefully about data as an asset in itself, yeah. Right? The exhaust, things like that.
Yeah.
You got examples you can talk about in terms of firms that have done that well or made mistakes that would be interesting?
Well, I mean, the one I started off with was IBM, and right. They arguably took a very brave bet in this direction by migrating themselves from a product company to a service company, and knowing that they still had some strong smarts in data analytics, high performance computing. So I think the issue for them has been how do they harness all of those bits of their capability, jettisoning the cash cow of computing and the commodity side, so that they can access more data and sell better services. And it's been hard. And I think we've not seen productivity rise as quickly as we might have thought because of the power of analytics in some of the consulting markets. So I think some of that is still, how do we capture that data and how do we turn that into advantage and keep that advantage moving forward?
But what would be interesting would be if someone in IBM said, I don't know, I've run an analytic against all the service contracts we have, and here are the highest margin ones, and I'm going to publish that service to any consultancy to allow to bid against that, right?
Yeah.
You could see that wouldn't go down so well, right?
No.
But have you seen firms doing, interesting data innovation where they've managed to change the organization, or whether they've set up a new co?
Well, I mean, can we switch sectors completely?
Yeah, sure.
So if you go to I'm a civil engineer by background. If you go into the engineering design industry, a company like Arup, which is headquartered here in London and has built or engineered the structures of maybe even the building we're sitting in today. I mean,
This is Victorian. Sorry.
Is it? It's not at all, is it? Don't call me on that one. Arup have been very good at combining different analytical tools. And after 9/11, they were able to bring together tools for looking at the fire engineering in buildings and managing the escape of people, the evacuation of people, if there was a disaster in a building. And a lot of that they did through bringing different digital models together and making a combined simulation. And they created a new division, Arup Fire Engineering, which is probably the lead in the world still for tall building design. And that is all powered by being able to harness data in the design stage about how different bits of the building will perform, the structures, the lifts, the escape ways, and what will happen with smoke. So, yeah, you can create new businesses even in a good, mature sector like engineering design.
Right.
Yeah.
Quite complementary. I think the other obvious question I had, which was, I think something Thomson Reuters thinks about a lot, is about the privacy implications of what is happening. As data gets analyzed, as the exhausts get leveraged, particularly as you get into data trading or people aggregating data sets which weren't obvious. That can be a big challenge, right? So how do you think about that when you're doing projects around?
Yeah, okay, so two things, right? One is when you talk about the privacy, you really have actually three things. One is the legal issue here, right, the ethics, and the second one is you have technology issue here to actually realize the restrictions. But the other one, which is usually be ignored, actually not be really studied, is actually the economic factor, is rewarding, right? So the people, you keep the data, it's for the reason, right? So if you have the right incentive, particularly in the healthcare sector, if you think about that. And actually, you probably can achieve, you're rewarding people to give data away. All right? So this is the other way to talking about the privacy,
right?
Which is the way how to really enhance people the actual power to actually not give up, but actually reasoning about the privacy in an interesting way. So when I keep it, I can keep it. When I can trade it. So it's like any property, right? Any personal property. So this piece, actually, we pay a lot of attention. The first part, the legal part, we cannot do anything. That's the different sectors' work. Technology, we know very well. I think is now, and you can keep improve. But the other bits, which is really how to define the data granularity, define the data value, okay? And how to actually realize these values and make this one a trading protocol. So that's the weak part.
So healthcare clearly is interesting around that because there's societal benefits, right? And so you're trading off how much you as an individual couldn't hold your versus what the society.
But also
benefits.
you also benefits too,
right.
as an individual.
Potentially,
right?
yeah. But what about, I don't know, I think, we tend to sell business to business. So, Goldman Sachs might be concerned about the analytics we could run against the way they use our products. And if, that could make our products better, but have you worked with companies which have had to handle those kind of challenges, and have
yes.
Are you seeing interesting ideas around how to do that?
Not too. I think all the interesting idea when you're really talking about use other people's data is basically you can say if I aggregate the data, use all the statistics will be actually avoid the issues of the privacy. That's the one, and you can take the de-identification as the other one. So all this one is technically available, and you can always do that. And you can always have the problem, the risk. You can actually, no matter how you de-identify, you can always recover the person. That's always there, no matter how you clever.
Right.
So this is a risk you have to take. But on the other hand, really, as you said here, if you really take data as a resource, as an asset, right? And now the key issue here now is how to define its value, how to protect the value, how to trade the value. So I think the value played a key role when you really understand privacy.
Yeah.
If you look at, in the public sector, you look at what London's done by making data about London's performance publicly available. It's made it a harder task in some respects to be the London's mayor, because there's much more transparency about what's good and what's bad happening in London today. You see pollution hotspots, you see crime hotspots, and public can engage in that. So actually, by making some of this data available, you've changed the dynamics in terms of the business that you're in terms of running London. If you're Transport for London, it's done exactly that. Right. And I mean, most of us think that's...
People, I imagine, would worry about the security implications of opening up that data a lot.
There are very big security implications of that. And of course, the security services work with their own channels with that data, and we'd want them to...
Do they pollute it, obfuscate it?
In a city like London, so, yeah. James, there's a question popped up here about whether you should draw the line when collecting data, or, can you keep collecting data, and what does it mean if you do? And I think that's quite interesting, because we've had quite a bit of experience at Imperial thinking through. We do a lot of work with new sensor networks, and in a way we could carry on collecting data forever. I mean, the smart thing is what questions you can ask and what problems do you want to solve that might be valuable for someone else. And our experience is that you need to be able to frame that in a model. And so a lot of the value isn't necessarily the data, it's your ability to put the data into a model so you can do structured analytics and come out with some smart answers to either your own questions or other people's questions. And in fact, there is so much data out there that isn't put into a model at the moment. Collecting any more almost is meaningless. I think the key thing here is how can you create the right sort of modeling environment framework and ask intelligent questions so you can create value.
It's interesting that's the way I've read that question, and actually I think we have a number of examples where, because of where we've come from, we've typically tended to throw data away where we thought it wasn't valuable, and in some cases regretted that. And I think you need to be careful about what you throw away and what might be valuable one way. I think there are interesting examples of clients who would like to see the errors associated with data just as much as the actual data. Right? Sorry, you were going to say.
Yeah, I think the final comment is I always viewed, Thomson Reuters to compare with really like an oil refinement industry. If you think about data as natural resource, and the oil industry in the petroleum engineering is to take the raw data, raw material, raw oils, make the oil products. You can really think about, you can compare with Thomson Reuters as this kind of business. You can think about it, the data is just raw data, just natural resource, and you do all the refinements, you make data products. And this is second level. So I can see, for Thomson Reuters, the future is really unlimited, because you can keep going to do the whole industry of taking the data to make the raw product. But data is interesting. When you make a product, the product itself is data again, right? Sure. So you keep, this is a unlimited kind of circle. That's why the idea of exhaust come from. So you can think about is really, this is a good comparison, really. Look, if you think data is a new natural resource, and this company is in the golden position actually to create the data refinement industry, if you like, data chemistry industry, if you like. It can go forever.
So I think we've got two ways to go, right? We've got using the data ourselves to make better products, to move into products which are more contextual, which are more workflow driven. And then we've got the ability to deliver tools for managing data and more data as well. We need to wrap up. Thank you, David and Yike. It's been great. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.